Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, whatever time it may be while you're watching this. I'm Marty Walser, otherwise known as the Raging Owlbear on social media, and wanted to talk about NPCs tonight because there was been a bit of a discussion in the Twitter sphere among the sort of well-known Twitterati, as it were, in the D&D world. Especially DM David, if you read the DM David blog, which is a really great blog. He had posted recently as a sort of thought experiment for an article he was writing, what makes NPCs memorable, or not just memorable, what makes your players care about those NPCs? And this is for those of you who may be new game masters, new dungeon masters, this is actually something that even people who've been in the game for years and years struggle with all the time. Getting your players to sort of care for an NPC rather than just see them as a cardboard cutout, like in Skyrim or whatever, the guy is like, "Ooh, I was an adventurer too once until took an arrow to the knee." Silly stuff like that. But so here's the thing. One of the things that you will learn as a DM is that your players will always do pretty much what you least expect, or the opposite of what you think they're going to do, just all over your game, not just regarding the NPCs, but, all the time. They're going to do a very unexpected things. But this has a side effect of, especially if you're trying to create NPCs for your game that are in certain villages, and these are really important people that, have some sort of story hook or have stuff like that, the sort of rule of thumb seems to be the more time you spend on a favorite NPC, the more likely your players are going to sail right by her or him or it. But the point is that they're going to just zoom past probably your favorite NPCs all the time. You just can't account for it. You never know what is going to sort of strike their fancy. And that's really the key, is what do you think is going to strike their fancy? So I've had some ideas. I've written up some ideas about what it takes to make a memorable NPC. And really, my method is more about trying to find something on the fly. If you go out on the internet and you say memorable NPCs, what makes a memorable NPCs in Google or whatever, there's lots and lots of articles about how to make your NPC interesting and give them motives, and how you can try to hook your players on stuff, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of advice out there, so I'm probably not going to shed any better light on that. But I think I do have something that some of these articles don't address, is that there are times when, like I said, your players are going to sail right past the guy or gal that you made that you think is key to a plot point, or perhaps they're having a discussion at the table. They're doing sort of that out of character meta discussion about what they need to do or where they need to go next. And they're like, "Oh, you know what? We really need to find someone who, maybe they have an old map, or maybe there's somebody at the library, if there's a library or other research facility, the local sage, stuff like that, because we need this piece of information." And you hadn't necessarily accounted for that. This is something that they're just talking at the table, and you're sitting back and you're like, "Oh, man, I need to find somebody," They're like, "Oh, well, maybe we can find a guard who we can bribe to let us in the back door of, whatever, the fort." Or maybe they're coming up with ideas that you hadn't thought of, but you're like, "Oh man, I'm going to need an NPC, and I'm going to need them right now." So that is what my sort of write-up on the blog, and what this video is about, is sort of, how do you come up with somebody who's a memorable NPC, not just sort of this faceless cardboard cutout, but a memorable NPC, but on the fly when you need him right away, or her, or it. Like I said, it could be awakened tree, that's an example, or just something non-human, something human, some creature, but anyways, the point is you need something fast, and you need a way to make that thing. You need a way to sort of think on your feet, but maybe you're not really good at coming up with something on the spot. And so this little sort of prep method, I think, can go a long way to help with that. So really what I have is I've built what I call the 5-minute NPC worksheet. And this is something that if you do a little bit of prep ahead of the game, not that you're prepping a specific NPC, but what you're doing is you're creating a framework where you can grab and create an NPC on the fly, but you've kind of pre-planned it a little bit, but it'll make it seem more natural because you won't be stuck going like, oh my God, at the table, you know, when your players are like, oh, we need to find this guy. And you're like, So I built this thing, the NPC worksheet. This is just my little notes jotted down, but I have a little a PDF document on the blog, and I'll link it from the video. But really what it is it's kind of boils down to 4 things, 5 maybe. The couple of the topics, a couple of the pieces kind of fit together, but just a few things that you need to prep in advance to make you be able to create an NPC on the fly. And I'll quickly go over them and then go into more detail. 1, obviously you need a name, and you need a genre, culturally appropriate name. 2, you need like a personality trait. You know, a general overview of that person's demeanor. 3, maybe a quirk to fit with that demeanor, some sort of personality quirk. Those are kind of like 2 together, but I'll say 1, 2, 3. And then last, some other piece of their personality that you can throw in that might show their culture or show something sort of unique about them, like a catchphrase or something similar. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's kind of a half. So it's really like 3 things and a half thing. And then there's a bonus, which is imagery, but I'll get to that at the very end. That's not necessarily needed for this sort of on the fly methodology, but it's a bonus, and I'll get to that last. So first thing you need is a name. And you might think, oh, that's easy. I can come up with a name, no problem. But a lot of times, honestly, you're at the table and they meet somebody, you introduce an NPC. He could just be the weapons merchant, or he could be the sage, like I said, local sage. He could just be, or she could be the captain of the guard. You know, there's some other thing, the wizardess, sorceress, the half-orc barbarian, you know, all the tropey stuff. And you're going to be like, I need a name. And they're like, what's this guy's name? His name is Bill. Billboard. Oh shit. No, not Billboard. You know, you have that little brain lock that's like, I need a name in a minute. Now, the nice thing about it is there's a ton of names on the internet. All kinds of names. You can do lookups. And even better, there's Xanathar's lovely guide. Now, here's the thing. I thought it was funny when they first previewed Xanathar's guide. And they're like, oh, there's going to be lists of names in the back. And I was like, oh my God, how useless is that going to be? You can get a million names on the internet of all kinds of, you know, name generators, fantasy name generators, whatever. But honestly, the book is pretty good because it's right here, you know. You don't have to pull up something on your laptop or your iPad. It's just right here in the book. But even with, you know, and the lists are really extensive. I mean, you know, the different racial names, half-elf names, gnomish names, you know, orcish names, halfling, whatever. And then there's, you know, the sort of earth cultural names, you know, there's Celtic and Germanic and Slavic and Egyptian and sort of North African names and then Central African names and Mesoamerican names and Japanese and Chinese names. And so it sort of the lists in the back of Xanathar sort of span the cultural globe, you know, human and non-human, you know, when you the Faerunian globe, as it were. And so these are actually really great because you can just quickly at your fingertips just page through and just kind of point and find something you like, and you're good. You got yourself a name. Here's some Norse names, Norse women, and then a Mesoamerican name, Ezekiel or something like that. Oh wait, okay, great. But again, when you're trying to do this on the fly, you don't want to necessarily fumble with a book, because you want the NPC to feel natural. And so the players, if you kind of pick up the book and the players are like, oh, what's this person's name? And you're like, give me a second. Yeah, let's see. Let's find an appropriate. You don't want to break in the action. You don't want to pause. You don't want to, hey, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain kind of moment. You want to pull it out. You want to have it right there at your fingertips and be like, yeah, I know this person's name, and boom, you have it. And that's the step one on the NPC list. What you do is you think about in advance. So maybe you do this, within the weeks as you're prepping for your sessions, and your characters are adventuring in a certain region, whether it's Faerun or your homebrew world, but there's going to be some sort of cultural backdrop that area has. Whether it's like the jungles of Chult, which is sort of a little bit Africanized in Tomb of Annihilation, or maybe you're somewhere far up the Sword Coast and you're looking at 10 towns, and so maybe it's Nordic or Inuit like, or whatever, what have you. You're somewhere in the region that has a cultural backdrop, and maybe it's just a plain pseudo European, Celtic, Germanic, or maybe it's Asiatic. Whatever the cultural backdrop is, what you do is you come up with a list of local names. So these names are local to whatever culture is represented in that area of the map. So that way you can pick out a name and say, oh yeah, this is a person that grew up around here, or is at least native to the surrounding regions that the adventure is taking place. Then you have, as sort of a secondary part of the list, so you have the local guys, and then you have sort of your non-local or non-human or something that might be exotic to or foreign to wherever the adventure setting is. So, again, if they're in Chult and that's, sort of has an African flavor to it, you can, then you bring in the names, the foreign, quote, foreign names are the sort of non-African names, the European names, the Asian names, or such. Or if you're in a European-like setting, like this, much of the Sword Coast kind of has that weird European flavor. Or if you're really hardcore into the different Faerunian human cultures, you can, what types of Earth cultures sort of map onto the Faerunian cultures. And you pick a few names that are sort of exotic to the region that your players are currently adventuring in. So those would represent traders who might have come in and settled, or are on the road. They're traveling merchants, but they happen to be in local. Or like I said, they've come in from somewhere else. They're adventurers, they're merchants. They're some sort of expatriate from somewhere else, but now they're living locally in that region, and they're sort of blending their lives into the local region, but they're going to have names that come from different culture. And so what I like to do is you have, like, just on the ready, 8 to 10 of the local names, males, females, sort of gender neutral, various names. And then you have maybe 6 or fewer, maybe you only need 3 or 4, whatever, of sort of the more, foreign names from a culture that's other than where your characters are currently adventuring. And so that way you are ready to, whether the character's male or whether the character's female, the NPC that is, whether the NPC is male or female, or whether it's sort of gender neutral, or it's a non-human, or, awakened tree, whatever. You have a set of names, some sort of normal to that region and some exotic to that region, that you're ready to pull one out. And so you really just, all you're really doing is glancing down at your paper that you have behind your DM screen or on the side somewhere, and you just say, okay, yeah, tonight I'm going to use name number 4, you know, and boom, you cross that one off the list, or you have that. So there, you got a name right away, and you make it look natural. Second thing, you need some personality traits. So again, over here you have your name list on the one side, and then you've got like a small list of personality traits. And again, and on the internet, there's a million lists. You can type NPC personality traits, or just personality traits, or whatever. But you know, if you say RPG personality traits, you often come up with stuff that is relevant. You know, an NPC generator or something like that. Or if you go back into some of the older books, first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. This is the one that saw the table a lot, and that's the one that is my more pristine condition one. But yeah, so this one, you know, lovely binding, right? Page, it's like 100, I want to say, right around 100, where they have like their little NPC generation. Oh, and I lost my bookmark. So here, now I'm doing exactly what I told you not to do. Page to the book. So page like 100, 101. Yep, here they are. So like personality traits, you know, and other things like are their age, their sanity, are they crazy? But you know, what's their nature? Are they materialistic? How brave are they? You know, you can pick, sort of cherry pick several different traits out of these tables in the old DM guide or on the internet, and like I said, write 8 of them down. Write sort of 8 new personality traits. So you have like 8 to 12 names, 8, you know, personality traits. You can even roll secretly behind the screen, but it's really just better if you just kind of look down and pick, you know, oh, you know what, I think this person's going to be this way. So you have it right at the right at your fingertips. And then, you know, you can have quirks related to their personality type. You know, are they a little bit distrustful? Are they standoffish? But not only that, like, so that kind of goes with their personality trait. That is a personality trait. But you can also, like, do they have a, you know, kind of a nervous, anxious, like, not twitch, but you know, they're a little bit jumpy because they're like, you know, PTSD. Who knows? But maybe they're just a little bit jumpy, a little bit nervous, a little anxious, or maybe they're totally like, oh man, this guy's totally chill. Yeah, dudes, man, what's the rush? What's the rush? Why are you driving? Man, you're knocking my chill, you know, you're whatever, you know, make them give them that little thing that is a accentuation to that personality. So, you know, I have quirks as separate from traits because, you know, there might be something that's very specific. Like, you know, like I said, it could be, you know, either a nervous twitch. It could be some other thing that isn't their personality trait, but is some other accentuation to it. So you can write, just like I said, short list of ideas. Here's the personality trait. Here's the quirk. So that's 2 right there, or 2 and 3, however you want to count it. And then, you know, the third one is, no, actually, before I get into the third one, don't be afraid to work on, you know, use tropes, pop culture stuff. So, you know, there's always sort of the elderly sage guy. There's the young, innocent boy who's turning to a man who's going on his hero's journey. There's the sort of, you know, rogue who's seen a few things. He's been around for a while, you know, and he's just a little bit, you know, he's a little bit jaded. He's not totally trusting of everybody. He's just trying to make a buck. You know, those are 3 obvious tropes from very obvious pop culture references. But it doesn't have to be a Star Wars reference. It could be, you know, Walking Dead. You have Rick Grimes, the sheriff. You have a straight shooting law person. You know, they have some leadership qualities, and they're you know, kind of thinking and measuring up the PCs, and you know, looking them over, and do they trust them? Or there's the other guy who wants to be that sort of leader, but he's a little bit dark. You know, he's the Shane. He doesn't quite have those charismatic leadership qualities, but you know, he wants to be that guy, but he'll also like, he'll screw you if he thinks it'll improve his place in the world. So, you know, you can pull out these pop culture references, and you can work with the tropes. You know, you have the swashbuckler rogue, and then you have like the sort of sketchy rogue that's like, hey man, I just got some, look what I got here. I got a little braces of defense, just fell off the coach, the stage coach. Yeah, you know, they maybe they don't look like they're much, but you know, once you get them in combat, they'll work. I guarantee you they'll work. Right? Yeah. You know, real cheap fell off the stagecoach. You know, play around with whatever silly ideas. But so there's the tropes, because then those are easily recognizable. You know, the players immediately will get the tropes because they've seen them before. They're, you know, they've been trotted out. It's easily recognizable. But what sometimes even works better is absolutely playing against the type. So, you know, everybody's seen the dour dwarf, you know, oh, he's gruff, he's grumpy, and oh, I'm the dwarf, and blah, 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 blah. You know, been there, done that. Seen the dour dwarf. Break out Party Dwarf. Party Dwarf. Woo! Woo! Party Dwarf. Everybody loves Party Dwarf. We're going to get drunk. In the morning, we're going to kill some goblins, man. If we can not be too hungover. But no, tonight we're going to go out and we're going to party. And then we're going to kill stuff. And then we're going to party some more. Everybody loves Party Dwarf. You know, don't be afraid to be over the top with the personalities. That's another thing that, you know, people want that larger than life, or it's not that they want it so much as that they'll remember the larger than life NPCs that you throw at them. And I know that means like you're going to have to throw a lot of sort of larger than life from time to time. You know, you're going to have to take it to that level. Because yeah, you know, nobody remembers guard number 3. You know, what was his name? He was at that gatehouse or something. I think we bribed him. Nobody remembers that guy. You got to give him a hook. You got to give him that personality thing. So, you know, again, the personality trait, the quirk, catchphrases. Again, write down a few ideas. This kind of goes along with the personality quirk. These kind of cascade down, but the nice thing about catchphrases is that it makes that, again, that NPC sort of quickly identifiable if you give them some sort of thing that they say, or even if it's not a single catchphrase, but it's a manner of the way they talk, you know. And like, as an example, my players came into town on a Tribor, stuff like that, and you know, I decided to make Xanathar, who's the sort of the sheriff, or she was kind of a female version of sort of the Andy Griffith. You know, she's a little homespun, but she's going to shoot you in the face if you crossed her. Maybe not Andy Griffith, a tougher Andy Griffith. You know, she was the sheriff, and she was like, you know, she wanted to take care of her people, her citizens. And so she knows people, and she's easygoing, and, you know, but she's also hard as nails, you know? So I made her like Andy Griffith with an edge, but I tried to use that sort of stereotypical sort of, you know, sheriff speaking style, so to speak, of the person who is they're really smart up top, but they're kind of talking slowly because maybe they want you to think they're a little bit slow, or they're really just using that time to measure you up. So they're just kind of picking and choosing their words, carefully, because they're really measuring you, you know, and that can work for you. That can even make your players underestimate that NPC as an NPC if you play them a certain way. You know, another good example is the character in Village of Hamlet's, you know, spoilers for the 1978 module, if you're not familiar with it. But there's a character who's kind of plays, he's not really the village idiot, but he plays like kind of like the plain homespun folk kind of guy, but he's actually, you know, a plant for one of the local nobles. He's keeping his eye on things. He's playing dumb because people will talk, and people aren't afraid to talk around him because they just think he's kind of the dumb yokel. So, but he's actually really smart and sort of spy, you know, and he can be made into an ally of the party, or if the party starts effing up, you know, he can turn on them. He can be like, yeah, you know what, these guys are no good. They're murder hobos. We're gonna take care of that shit. So, you know, use those tropes and play against tropes. You know, Party Dwarf, and instead of that, the elf is maybe the elf is the dour one. You know, the elf is the one that's like, you know, grim, dark. You know, the elf lives a long time and sees the future in his mind, and he's not happy about it. You know, that could make the elf pretty dour, is to see that the world is going to hell, and he or she doesn't have a whole lot of control over that, so it's not a happy elf. So instead of being carefree like whatever all his brethren, no, he's pretty pissed at the world and wants to, you know, make sure everybody knows. So yeah, play against tropes. And going back to the catchphrases, bouncing back and forth between 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, whatever it is, with the catchphrases, you know, if that character is one of the exotic characters, so to speak, like you have the list of local names, the list of more exotic names, or even if they're the local, but the locals have a different cultural aspect than the player characters do, the PCs do, you can use bits of language as phrases that the NPCs can just, you know, drop. And, you know, Google Translate is your friend here. Type in a couple things in Google Translate, you know, a curse word or just some phrase like, Jesus. Well, Jesus is a bad excuse. Damn it. Say damn it, and put how to say damn it in several languages. You know, gaishida. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but you know, whatever. Use some phrase, a swear, or maybe not even, you know, by Helm's hammer or whatever, you know, but translate it into another language, you know, for one of the cultures that you have written down on your sheet for one of the names, so that you could have them, the NPC, discussing in common, and then they stop and they go, scheiße, you know, or whatever. They say something in another language, in their native language, that makes them stand out a little bit in the players' minds. So that's a good place to jump to voices and accents. Everybody who's new to DMing and GMing, whatever, whether it's D&D or you're playing GURPS or you're playing Savage Worlds, whatever your game is. So when you're new in the driver's seat, voices are vexing. Alliteration. Voices are a pain for new people, and actually for people who've been doing it for a long time. Because, you know, unless you're one of those voice actors on one of the most popular streams out there, whether it's Critical Role or, you know, Merle's stream or somebody else's, and those guys are professional, you know, voice presenters. That's not you and I. We DMs, we're just dudes in our basement and gals in our basement, or in our living room, whatever. It's not in the basement. the point is that we're not voice actors, but your players won't care because they're going to love the effort, even if it's terrible. Honestly, if it is terrible, they might even love it more. And let me give you an example. I was setting up an NPC for my party who was just supposed to be kind of, he was a merchant, but he was a little bit shady. He was roguish. He was flamboyant. And I wanted to play him over the top. I wanted him to just totally stick in their minds. So I was thinking about how to sort of voice this person. And there's a character from a Star Wars cartoon called Hondo. And Hondo is a rogue. He's a mercenary kind of guy, but he's mostly into stealing things and stuff. But he has this sort of over-the-top personality where it's, oh, hello, my friends. Everybody's my friend. Come, sit down, have a drink. We'll talk. We'll have fun. We'll hang out, and then we'll do business together. You know. So, and that's a terrible, terrible impression of this character that's on the show. and honestly, when I was doing it at the table, the accent was everywhere. I mean, I was trying to make him, I don't know, kind of Mediterranean, sort of, but I'd be doing this. Oh, hello, come in, my friends. How you doing? So he's kind of Italian one moment, and then he's French. I'm like, oh, merci, come, see it. And then he's like Russian the next minute. I don't know. He just, the voice is all over the map. I'm just trying to portray a personality type. The voice and the accent wasn't really the key part. I was trying to show my players that this guy is just like a bullion, and he's a little bit shady, but he's like one of those guys who's like everybody's friend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it worked great. They loved him. And I'm telling you, the voice was terrible. The voice is terrible, but they loved him. Which brings me to another little piece of advice, the side piece. Don't kill the NPCs that your players suddenly like. and that is a mistake I made. So this is one of those instances where learn from my mistakes. Do as I say, not as I do. But really learn from my mistakes. And my mistake was I tried to make them over the top because I wanted the players, the characters, the players to remember him, because he was going to go away and they needed to find out why. It was a mystery. It was kind of like the old N1, Cult of the Reptile God. It was a variant on that plot. Villagers are going away, or the merchants that are traveling through, they just suddenly leave town suspiciously, whatever. The point is that he went away and they were supposed to meet him. And I'm like, he's gone. He didn't, and they ask around. They're like, did he check out? Oh no, he didn't check out. That's strange. Whatever. And they start trying to figure out what happened. Oh, and wait, he's not the only one missing. There's other people missing. And then there's the mystery that they start to then unravel. The big mistake I made is I killed him. Don't do that. If your players like an NPC, do not kill the NPC, because it is so hard to get them to like an NPC. They're gonna see lots of NPCs over the course of the campaign, and honestly, they're only gonna attach to a few of them. So when they do, don't kill that person. And I did that, and it was a huge mistake. And I could have brought him back. I could have easily, they got to the end of the mystery. They actually found some survivors, villagers who had been captured, that were still alive, that they rescued. And I had taken that off the table because not that they found his body necessarily, but they found his hat, and they found something. He had this, I described him, he had this big red hat with a feather and yada, yada, yada. He was very, very colorfully dressed. But the point is that the clue was they find some of his clothes. So clearly he's not long for this world. But I should have saved him. And if there's one piece of advice that you take from this video, don't kill NPCs that your party's like. Feel free to kill the NPCs that they hate. Actually, sometimes you want to hold on to those too, because they make great sort of recurring, not even villains, just rivals. Like not even the guys that like are bad guys, but just guys that they hate. Keep them around because that engages your players. But so yeah, you know what? Take that voice, play it over the top with one caveat, and that is be very careful when you are portraying a culture that exists in the real world, because that can go very badly if you portray a horrible stereotype. Just don't do it. You know, like I said, I was playing around with accents, but I wasn't making him, he was cartoony, but he wasn't cartoony in a stereotypical way. I was just making him larger than life and friendly and stuff like that. And so the accent moved around. I wasn't trying to play to a particular cultural type. I wasn't trying to make fun of Italians or what, you know, his voice moved all over the place. But if you're trying to play a culture that is not your own culture, don't stereotype an accent. It's just no, just don't do it. You know, because you're gonna be offensive, and especially if you have people at your table who are not like you, who are culturally, you know, diverse, and you start playing some stereotype, even if the person is not from that culture, they're gonna immediately be like, "Oh Jesus, here he goes." You know, in their head, they're gonna be like, you know, just that there's that thing online, that little meme. Don't do it. No, stop. That's what I'm telling you. Don't try to play an accent in a stereotypical way. Don't do the Jar Jar, you know. If you think you can work an accent that is different from yours, that is not going to be insulting, then yeah, absolutely work on it. But just, you know, there's a line. Know where that line is. And again, you can use those language phrases to bring that flavor to the NPC without stereotyping them. So, you know, again, if you give them a phrase in another language, whether, you know, it's a Japanese expression or whether it's, you know, Spanish, whether it's, you know, German, whatever, find a language, attach it to that person, and then use that little phrase. You know, just talking, you can even talk in your normal voice, but then throw that phrase in, and that keys the player's memories to be like, oh yeah, that guy, you know, was a German dude. He kept saying Scheiße. Scheiße. Ah, Scheiße. Scheißkopf. You dumbass. Scheißkopf. So to recap, local names, exotic names, personality traits, quirks, catchphrases. There's your NPC worksheet. And I have a PDF that links to the blog. For bonus points, visuals. Now, again, this is if you have a little prep time, you know about some NPCs that you're building in advance, or you know that you're going to need NPCs of a certain type. You're running you're running one of Wizards of the Coast's books, and you have the access to D&D Beyond, the book there, or in Fantasy Grounds, stuff like that. Visuals. You know, run Storm King's Thunder. You know, here's my Tribor crew, and here's my Golden Fields crew. You know, I just made some printouts of the digital assets that are available to me. Don't pirate. I own the books. You know, you can Xerox copy those pages out of the book because I own it. It's fair use. And if you have the Fantasy Grounds version or the D&D Beyond version, you know, a lot of these art assets are available for you for use from those sites. D&D Beyond, Fantasy Grounds, when you pay the licensing fee. So This is actually a great idea because I made these little, you know, I printed out the people. They're baseball card sized. And I have a little slot for, you know, when they meet them so that they have their cheat sheet of people they met. Even on the back, I even printed out for myself in case I need it. The little, there's your stat block, you know. Folded, shoved in the back behind the card. Boom. There's the NPC they know. There's some stats if you need them. Similarly, these things are great. Pathfinder face cards. Now, a lot of these are out of print. The best, unfortunately, the best ones are out of print, are expensive in the secondary market. They print out these little face cards for each of their adventure paths, but they have a couple packs of sort of generic. One of them's called like Allies and Foes. This one's the Pathfinder Society, you know, so it's just a list of the generic. And these cards are great, honestly. If I know they're going to meet someone, you know, boom, there's your guard. Need to bribe the guard. Boom, there he is. Guard guy. You know, the Femme Fatale. You know, who knows? Is she trustworthy? Is she not? Is she in distress? Is she not? The veteran. I mean, she's young, but she's got the scars and she's seen some stuff, you know? She's been around, she's been on the battlefield, she knows things, she's seen things. You know, maybe she'd be a good contact. This guy, he looks a little bit all right, your players are gonna stake this guy. I mean, look at him. They're gonna take one look at this guy and they're gonna be like, they're either gonna be like, fuck, I mean, pardon my French. Oh hell, that dude is going to kill us, and they're going to skip town, or they're going to be like, dude, we're going to stake him. So, you know, maybe don't use him unless you have plans. But actually, this is a great example of playing against type. This guy could just be a noble who's got a, you know, a real high, you know, what do they call those? Widow's peaks. He's just a dude. He's just a human. They go and they murder him in his sleep because they think he's a vampire. Now they're wanted for murder because they're dumbasses. And, you know, that's, I guarantee you, this guy's going to die in your campaign if you introduce him as an NPC. And it'll be at the hands of the party, and it'll probably be an illegal killing. So law enforcement doesn't like those guys. And then they're like, and then there's this guy, and they're going to be like, what the hell's going on with his helmet? Well, that's the difficulty of some of these pictures, because he's just going to be known as Helmet Guy from that point on. It doesn't matter what name you give him. He's going to be Helmet Guy. Pardon me. Yeah, speaking of which, I was talking about picking culturally appropriate names. You know, pick names that aren't too weird, because as soon as you pick a name that's too weird, that it's hard to remember, your players are going to rename them something awful. So, you know, don't be like, his name is Haranskaballs. Whatever. That's a terrible example, but they're going to call that guy Balls. Haranskabal. Oh, no. Oh, you mean Bally over there? That guy's got no balls. You know, they're going to joke about any name that you throw out that sounds a little bit funny and weird. That's, you know, hell, they'll do that even if the name is normal sounding. But, you know, just don't go crazy with the fantasy names. You don't need 3 Z's, 2 apostrophes, an R and a T in the guy's name. I don't know anybody like that. No, I did say 3 apostrophes, not 1. Point is, don't, you know, there's lots of great culturally appropriate names for, you know, whatever your backdrop might be. But again, you know, you can use something sort of fantasy, the elfin names, the gnomish names. Just don't go crazy, because I guarantee that name that you give out will not be the one the players call that person by. So I think that hits on all the major points. You know, you got your list of names, you got your list of personality traits. You do some accents, do some catchphrases. Don't pirate. Don't stereotype. You know, those are the two big no-nos. But the point is that play that NPC kind of over the top. Make them larger than life, because those are the ones that they're going to remember. Now, this took me way, way longer to explain than it does to do in practice. It'll take you 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to write down these names and personality types, and you're done. And then you have that sheet for the next 10 sessions. And then you might have to, you know, as you use up names, you know, write in some new ones. Oh, and be sure that once you've used the name and you have a location for that NPC, write it down. Write down so-and-so was in this town, you know, write down what their name was, where they were, and what personality type you picked for them. Because if you don't take that good note, you're not going to remember, you know, 8 weeks later in the campaign when they're like, oh, who was that? Who was that person that we talked to in, you know, in Waterdeep or Tribor? And you're going to be like, oh, man, I don't remember. So unless your players take really good notes, you need to at least know where your NPCs live. That's pretty much it. Got my outline. So I've been Marty Walzer, the Raging Owlbear. If this video was at all helpful, please like and subscribe. I need some more eyeballs, so tell me what you think. Do you like it? Do you not like it? At least I hope it's valuable. So have a good night, good day, good afternoon. We'll see you next time.